I'm so sorry that.
No worries. There we are. Well, greetings, everyone, and good evening. And I'll say again, since we wanted on the recording, that I am aware congratulations are in order that you've completed your program. And as I said to Pael when we were thinking about me coming and spending a little time with you, I think this is an important moment to consider how do you sustain each other as a community as you start to go out in the world and apply the learning. And, Marshall Goldsmith, long before we had a constellation called the International Coaching Federation and a core competency model, he wrote that little book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There.
Yeah.
And he says in that book, actually, that, being a leader is a contact sport. It applies to coaching too. We can read theories, we can do research projects, all very useful. But at the end of the day, what happens in a moment spontaneously in the field you're co-creating with another human being, that's the mystery of coaching and why it's quite challenging for many to reduce it to something simple. Not impossible, certainly. Uh, but I became a little bit of a geek. I didn't like the core competencies when I first met them. They seemed rather simple to me. I looked at the words on the page and thought, well, but of course. And then I did my first certification program. And then I did a second certification program. I did a third certification program. And the combination of the three, I began to see a much subtler level to those core competencies. They began to be something I could breathe. Embody is the word we use. I think that often confuses leaders. So I'm one who speaks a lot in metaphor on purpose. My brother, when I wrote my first book, he said, "Has anybody ever given you the feedback that you talk in metaphor?" He's an engineer and a geologist, so it was a little challenging for him. And yet, storytelling and metaphor, imagery, these are all things we use as humans to make meaning over time at the pattern level of what it is to be a human. And this is the context that all coaching is working in. It doesn't matter at some level that we are cross-cultural, that we have different languages, that we have different traditions. It matters, right, to us, absolutely. But we share a common humanity. And I think as coaches, when we can kind of soften the edges of the things that are our personal biases, we begin to see, oh, that is the flow of learning. Oh, that is the flow of original thinking. Oh, that's the flow of creativity. And these are three capacities in generative that often get dismissed and ignored. It's really the origin for me. I asked many leaders. I did a formal study of 250, but I started to realize that leaders had no idea what I was doing with them, and they really kind of wanted to know and sort of didn't want to know. So, those that were available, I'd ask them this question. What has sustained your ability to produce excellence year after year after year in a changing environment? And I will tell you that most couldn't answer the question. So, being a good coach, I kept asking more questions. And out of that came a pattern that they realized that they were comfortable challenging their own perspective. In other words, we all have habits and preference and assumptions and biases operating. We always do. The ones who were able to meet the challenge of a changing environment and a increasing level of complexity as their careers grew and their companies grew were ones that were not attached to what got them there. They also realized that when learning happens in a collective environment with their leadership team, for example, or with their board or with customers at industry events, that something else happened. Imagination began. People were having conversations that would allow ideation to come forward. and that that was a thing. It was a practice. Some of you might have studied how much uh, in the top 10 list for at least the 40 years that I've been in business, you will find having a learning organization and having innovation and or creativity are critical, right? They're in the top 10 list all the time of what CEOs want. How are we doing? If it has to be on the top 10 list that many decades, interesting. Maybe we haven't cracked this challenge yet. And then, of course, creativity. So um, that's the genesis of generative. 4 verbs: learn, originate, create, produce. They all understood producing because, of course, that's how a going concern, a company produces something customers want to buy. But if you want to sustain excellence, you've got to know the other 3 in a more deliberate and conscious way. So to be generative means to adopt those capacities dynamically, fluidly, being able to move amongst them. And along with it, doing that from self, sourcing from self, an authentic self. Wholeness means having the freedom to express from our authentic self. And how do we do that? We do that by letting go of thinking that it's out there. Now, this sounds a little paradoxical. I get it. You're all learning how to demonstrate to a standard called the ICF core competencies, and that's out there. But all that is scaffolding. At the end of the day, it's still you. Who are you expressing the core competency skills? And how do you radiate your own sense of an authentic self? This is where we're going today. And um, the way I often frame this for people, and again, I think it's very important when you're listening to someone or having a conversation with someone that you do figure out what their bias is. So you can say, I agree with that, or I don't agree with that. Oh, there's the beginning of learning. I'm not trying to persuade you in any way, but rather to open up the camera lens a little bit for you to see maybe a wider perspective than you've been thinking about coaching from. And it's this: being a human has no destination. No destination. Maybe that's either terrifying or relieving. I'm not sure which it will be for you. Being a human requires conscious, deliberate, intentional wholeheartedness if we are to thrive as a society. Conscious, deliberate, intentional wholeheartedness. Just think about those adjectives for a minute. How conscious are you in every moment about how you are choosing to show up? How deliberate are you? Competency 2.6, I think, emotionally and mentally preparing for sessions. How intentional are you? I'm going to pause here for just a second. We won't have a ton of time to work on this today, but I think definitions are important. In my journey, I always thought about intentional as kind of synonymous with goal, but it's not. Intention is emotional and physical. So you have a felt sense of something, goosebumps on your skin, a rumble in your tummy, like you have a gut instinct around something that is as exciting and pulls you in, or uh-oh, danger zone, pull back, right? And then emotions, which is the place of the heart, intuition, that the image in the art museum that brings tears to your eyes, right? These are the emotional selves as opposed to the sensory selves. But when they are combined, it's very, very powerful for intention. So my definition of intention is this is a declarative statement in the I voice, present tense as if it's already occurring, that describes what I emotionally feel and physically sense as if it's already occurring. It's an inspired experience that I'm seeking. So one could say, I live sovereign as coach in and of itself is an intention statement. I live. So it implies vitality. Like I could say instead, I experience vitality as I live sovereign as a coach. Or I might say, I experience joy and gratitude and generosity as I partner with others as a sovereign coach. Doesn't matter. Your intention statement will be whatever it will be for you. What I want you to hear in what I'm describing to you is the quality of my experience. And when I'm clear about what it is that honors my internal self, I'm not worried about whether I'm demonstrating to a core competency. That's skills as opposed to the being of coaching. And the doing's important, don't get me wrong. I often say to the students, when you're first starting, they're right out front. You have a structure and you have a process and you learn some techniques and you get some methods, and all of them are meant to help you learn how to do the skills. And you get feedback and you learn how to reflect on your own practice, right? But with time, the self, which is back here, the authentic self, is going to move forward. And it's going to go past the skills because the skills are in your bones. And then this is where you lead with clients. It's actually the only way to consistently enroll clients to partner with you in a coaching engagement. It's the essence of who you are that matters. And the more faith you have in the essence of who you are, the easier it is to fluidly move wherever the client is moving, including being comfortable with what's not yet known, which is the artful work as a coach. Now, you're not going to know that as a result of 90 minutes together today. What I'm wanting is to give you some ideas about how to approach it. And it's a lifelong journey. A question I often get is, do you always coach at the MCC level? Which I just love. No, I am not a robot. What I would say is I'm intentional about coaching at the MCC level every time I show up with a client, every time I show up in the course room, every time I'm doing mentor coaching, every time when I'm doing coaching supervision, and frankly, now at this point in my life, every moment in my life. Am I always good at it? No. Which is why reflection on practice is so important as a skill, because we have many things influencing us. You've all just returned from campus. You had a commute. It might have been good, it might have been bad. Some of you were in Teams, some of you were here in Zoom. Some of you, it's late at night and you're a morning person. Others of you are like, oh, I'm a night person, I'm all excited. We have all of that sitting in our space. And then we could, take the circles out and feel all the ways in which the things going on in the world are impacting how we experience ourselves. Without conscious, deliberate intention from our wholeheartedness, we will operate out of habit or bias, and it will close down what we're able to perceive of the client and of the experience we are creating together. You are the instrument of your work. And when you make a commitment to coaching, yes, there's an ethical standard you're committing to, but I think there's a more important one, and it's an internal commitment that you have inside of you your own compass, something I call an inner authority. You've learned on your coaching journey how to listen interiorly. You've learned how to notice, oh, something, I'm having a reaction to something that the client said. You've learned how to be still in that moment until curiosity starts to bubble. And you recognize now that you ask questions based on what's been activated in you. This is what I mean. You have an inner authority. And that's where choice comes from. Whether it's in a coaching session or out in your lives, it doesn't matter. And we have a responsibility as a human being. We have a responsibility to listen to that inner self. Otherwise, we're always chasing something. a little bit like a revolving door I can't get out of. Oh, but there's a neat thing right over there. Let me go get it. Oh, it's not there anymore. Because what's out there? Somebody else. It's not you. So that's the authentic self. And what we're going to talk about today is authentic presence. How do you stay connected to your authentic presence so that you can live and be a sovereign coach? All right. I want to give you a way to personalize this. Let me just bring this slide up here. How are you arriving to our session today? This is actually a very common question in coaching supervision. So along your journey, you'll probably hear it. But I've given you some words. I know they don't always work. Language sometimes confounds us. But if you think about what they mean to you on a spectrum, the numbers have no evaluative meaning. So it's not better to be a 1 or better to be a 10. It simply is. On a spectrum from 1 to 10, are you feeling yourself on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, or kind of somewhere in the middle? And I've chosen these pairings because they're very common tensions. I've just spent a few moments talking about doing and being there at the bottom. When we're first learning something, we're going to be doing more doing and a little less being because we're trying to get it right, trying to figure it out. We want to soften that so that we can be more fluid in being. Now, if the house is on fire and we need to get out to save our lives, we want to be doing, not being, right? So I really to check in with yourself in this moment and just write a number for each of the rows. So you'll have 5 numbers. This is how we're starting. I'll just give you a moment and I'll be quiet while you do that. All right. So go ahead and open up your mics. I'd like to hear from a few of you. You can share your numbers if you want to, but I'm more interested in what are you aware of as you even reflect and ask yourself the question. And really open your mics because you just create a stoppage in the field by having them on, turning them on and off. I don't have any problem with noise in the background, so.
So can I go, Janet?
Salvi, go ahead.
So I think as I was going through the words, one thing I realized is that we probably don't even, at least I don't even think so deeply about being in one state or the other. So a lot of times I think it's just unknowingly being. I think that's the first thing that came to my mind when I went through all those. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly, Avni. Good. Good noticing for yourself that you have an autopilot switch. All humans do, by the way. There's any medicine-oriented people here in this group? No? Yes? So the reticular, yeah, okay, thank you. And the reticular activating system, which sits in the oldest part of the brain, in the brain stem. And its purpose was to protect us, right? So it regulates the sympathetic, parasympathetic movement in our nervous system. Really important. And as society has evolved and we're not threatened by being eaten by a lion or a bear or something like that, a shark in the water, then we manufacture new things that we perceive as threats, and the RAS manages it. Now, here's the cool thing. Two cool things, actually. The reticular activating system helps to regulate how we use our energy. Energy never goes away, it just transmutes. And we have this opportunity to recognize when something we've been doing, a habit we've been doing, isn't working anymore. So we want to change our habit. Well, we can tell the reticular activating system that that's no longer a threat, and I'm going to change my habit. And it will now build a new set of filters. But here's the hard part. You got to turn the auto switch off. So this is my language: conscious, deliberate, intentional wholeheartedness. It's pausing before we engage with something, including our own reflection time. What are your practices before you sit down to meditate? You turn the lights down. Make sure you've gone to the bathroom. Probably want to be hydrated before you sit down. Maybe you do music. You get the volume just right. Maybe you close the door and make sure that there's a sign on the door so you're not interrupted, right? These are all conscious, deliberate, intentional, wholehearted actions in order to optimize your meditation time. Be as deliberate with your coaching. Challenge your clients to be as deliberate when they arrive to coaching sessions. And when you're not, so when you both show up, sliding into the seat sideways, allow a moment to come present with each other, with self first, and then with each other, and then the body of work you're about to engage in. We are predisposed to habit. It's an energy conservation. But it also works at cross purposes to the learning, growth, and change that all coaching is about. Now, this sounds very simple. It is easy to say. It is not so easy to practice. If it was so easy to practice, we'd all be doing it. I wouldn't be talking about conscious, deliberate, intentional, wholehearted to thrive.
I was about to say, Janet, it is so difficult to practice, and I want to request you if you could share a few of your own practices. What do you do before entering a session? How do you bring in that intentionality and approach it in a deliberate way?
Yeah, exactly. So I have reminders on my calendar, and I keep 15 minutes between things. I'm not always good at it. Some days clients just put me back to back, but my intentionality is 15 minutes between appointments. And I use that time when I possibly can. It does rain a lot here, but not always. I try to get outside. I want to feel the sun on my face. I want to hear, I call it the violins. I have 30 fir trees in the property next door to me. So I go out and I listen to the wind and the birds, and I gaze out at the water, and I just let myself detach at one level from all the stuff I've been doing before that next session, come inside, and then realize I am one with all. The beauty of nature is hugely important for me to center and ground. And if I can't do that because things are just a little fast, I made a playlist for myself. Music is a huge way that I come back into the body, and I'll take a couple of minutes and listen to something on my wholeness playlist. That can help me shift states of consciousness very quickly. Meditation, of course, is fabulous. Regular meditation, you can blink your eyes and shift your state of consciousness. The other thing I will often do is bring up a picture of that client. If I can gaze into the image, that will also release whatever I was in before and bring me right into their field and help me to connect with whatever they've sent me. I have clients send me the night before. Sometimes it's a text or a WhatsApp or it's an email. What kinds of wins have they had? What what challenges came up this week that they might want to bring into their coaching? If they've got a particular context they want to work in, let me know what that is. Obviously, they can change their mind. Something could have happened a half hour before a session and they want to do something completely different, which is fine. The common denominator is still the client. And whatever it is they've come to coaching over time to learn, grow, and change about. Did you have a follow-up, Avinash? Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. I think one thing caught my attention when you said, you also sometimes deliberate on the picture of the client or what they want to talk about. So does that mean that you and the client agree upon the subject before every session?
Not as black and white as that. What I'm inviting the client to is to reflect on what's happened since I saw them last. I want them in a reflection practice to claim their successes because that's how they know they're making progress with what they brought to coaching. I want them noticing where did they stop short of what it is they're wanting to develop in themselves, aka a challenge. Ultimately, it might signal something that they want to address or resolve, skill 3.7, in the session itself. And they could change their mind. So I'm always going to create a session agreement, and it will be in the moment. And we're going to spend some time deepening the breadth and the depth of what that session agreement is. And if they've done some work ahead of time, the obvious things get said. The not so obvious things, that gets to happen in our coaching. You're
Right.
chuckling. What did that say for you?
Yeah, no, this is very interesting because when you spoke about how you step out, you listen to nature and you detach, that made a lot of sense. But the moment you said before the session you spend some time on the client itself, that caught my attention because that's something I've not tried. And this is definitely something that I want to try to think about the client, who they are, where they're coming from, and how their progress has been, to reflect on that. This is something that I do want to try. Thanks for sharing that.
Yes, you're very welcome. I suspect you've done some work around values clarification in your program. And I also include a values inventory as part of my initial discovery session. I spend a couple of hours at the beginning of a coaching partnership doing some exploration, getting to know each other at a deeper level than our ordinary life. As Avni was talking about, we don't think this deeply. But imagine if we were thinking this deeply. What would we shift and change in the way that we're engaging life? So that's what I'm after in that initial session. And so, Avinash, that's another place I might glance over at their values and see in the update that they've sent me, what value are they honoring here? And what value might be getting dishonored by the challenges that they've shared with me? These might be things that are going to show up in the session. By my looking at it, I'm like tuning a musical instrument. I'm aware that that might show up. So now I'm listening for it. If it doesn't show up, it doesn't show up. It's not a big deal. But I'm at least prepared to receive it. I've dropped my filters and I'm now opening to the client. Yeah.
I think that's lovely. Thank you so much for sharing this. I love how you spoke about tuning the musical instrument before the performance. And I mean, we did the values as part of our immersion program, but yet to do this with the clients as part of a discovery session. That's another great suggestion I'm taking away today. Thank you.
Good. All right. How about others? Pooja or Niraj? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, ma'am. It's Neeraj. Yes.
Niraj. Got it. And whose iPhone? You should change your name. Please.
I just did that. I'm so sorry.
There we go. Ashu.
Yes.
What showed up for you as we did that exercise?
I think it was a little bit of wonder. I was open. I think I was feeling like a sponge because we have been absorbing a lot of things during the past sessions as well. And I've always found it very fascinating when an external person who has hours and hours of experience comes and says something, because we've had a couple of sessions with other expert coaches as well. And so there have been moments where something very profound and something that has struck a chord has been shared. So I was excited about the session throughout the day. And so I was feeling like a sponge, need to take in a lot of things. That is how I was feeling. So maybe wonder, curiosity, I think that kind of a feeling. Yes. But when you talked about being present, and I was taken back to my college days, where I had perfected the art of, being asleep in the front, sitting in the front row in the lecture and nodding away to glory. And the teacher would never find out that I'm not even paying attention and I'm like a zombie almost. So I think that happens to me sometime. So I believe that, in my coaching sessions, I have to be aware of that, because that has helped me get away with many boring meetings, and where I can very nicely pretend to be very engaged, whereas I
Yeah.
am not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful insight. You know that's the habit space in your body.
Yeah.
And then I suppose the useful question, Ashu, would be, what activates you?
So something new, something exciting, something that catches my interest. But
Right.
sometimes some things that I have also kind of, because I am aware of this, bringing myself to the present. So there are some activities that I do. For example, feeling your weight on the chair that you're sitting, or your feet on the ground. Um, People say the breath, but I'm not able to do my breath that much. But I think feeling the weight of your own body, I think I do that quite often to bring myself back into the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. So deeply kinesthetic you are.
Yes.
Mm. Mm. In my experience of working with people who are what we call here in America, I don't know what it is in India, we say someone is on the spectrum. It means that their way of processing in their brain is quite different. Language is very difficult. It will put them to sleep. Like they just stop listening. And their engagement methodology, if it's super exciting, they'll totally get in it. But for
Yes.
something to be super exciting, it needs to have many dimensions to it. I know this quite well because my husband is high functioning autistic, but he is a former commercial pilot,
Oh,
which is
wow.
one of the most complex things you can do, right? And he was very good at it, and he was also an instructor. So, he would go up every day with somebody who was trying to kill him. Right? New people learning flying is not easy. I know, I've learned to fly. But my point here is that we will come across people who have all kinds of ways of engaging. And again, to stay in wonder, as you described, is the key. I want to give you my definition of wonder. This is something that I spent quite a bit of time with as I was writing my second book, because I wanted to understand, why do we override tension? We all feel it. We know when we're in a situation that feels a little uncomfortable to us, but we often push it away. It's like, oh, we're not supposed to feel tension. We're supposed to be centered and calm all the time. I think that's kind of silly. Just like equilibrium in the physics, it's a state to always be going toward, but you never arrive. So the key is, can I be agile? Can I be fluid? Can I be flexible? Can I be adaptive to what's showing up in front of me in the moment? So curiosity is the beginning of that. It's like, oh, let me ask this question and see how the client is experiencing themselves. Wonder, by contrast, is another generation. It is rapt attention at something astonishing emerging right in front of us. Rapt attention of something astonishing emerging right in front of us. This is what you are, over your lifetime, wanting to achieve in your coaching work. Wonder. And you get there through curiosity, absolutely. And learning to be curious about how someone is relating to their body of work, whatever that is in their life, not what they're doing. What is it that stimulates, what activates, what triggers, what motivates? This is the essence of really artful coaching work, and it's a lifetime process. So please be gentle on yourselves. If you think you're going to coach at the MCC level immediately, your mind might think so. But here's the key. It requires letting go of being right. Letting go of thinking you know something about the client. So Avinash, this is the trap, right? I do bring the client into my mind's eye. I do pay attention to their values. I might look at their coaching plan and the behavioral development they're seeking, but all I'm doing is tuning my instrument. I'm not staying attached to it. I simply want to be available for as much of them as they're able to let me have an experience of, and then engage from a state of wonder. And as I said at the beginning, do I always do it perfectly well? Whatever in the heck that means for me? No. Which is why reflection on practice and these kinds of discussions we're having tonight for you, are so important, because I can see, oh, wow, I was thinking about something else when I asked that question, and I totally missed this thing that client said. I wonder what that's about for me. I wonder what it's about that the client didn't call me on it. Why didn't the client say, hey, time out. This is more important to me? What does that say about our partnering right now? Where might we have fallen into habit because we're familiar with each other and I am not challenging them as assertively as they want? It's not my agenda, it's their agenda. They're asking to go from here and climb Mount Everest. All right, well, we got to do some training to be able to go that altitude and go that duration. And if I stop being their training partner, how are they going to get there? They aren't. So this is the reason, attending to our own authentic selves and being present, accepting the responsibility that we have an inner authority for how we choose to relate to the conditions of our lives. That is the definition of sovereignty. All right. Anybody else want to say anything before I give you a little more content?
Yeah, I can. So I just want to add that when I was looking at that spectrum, I did see that I mean, as a trainer, I think we're always on the left side of it. I think, being just going there to the training room, being the expert, trying to tell them what they should be doing, what's right and wrong. But yeah, I think for today's session, I did find myself in the curious development zone. And also, I think because of the whole, coaching that we've been going through for the last 2.5 months, I think I am trying to shift, towards being curious, wondering, and trying to be more open. And yes, it is difficult, And one day I'm like, oh, today I did well. And next day, probably in a conversation, I find myself again suggesting, or maybe, so yes, I think it is going to require a lot of practice for sure.
Yeah. Practice along with reflection. So if you were asking a closed-ended question instead of an open-ended question, usually that's an indicator that we were in our head trying to problem solve. What assumption was I making about the client in that moment that had me thinking my solution would be useful? It might work for you if you were presented with that problem, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for the client. And when you're done with that coaching session and they're back in their lives with all of the influences that happen in each person's life, will they even remember the conversation? Not the things you said, they'll remember the things they said. And they might remember thinking and didn't say out loud, well, that's how do I say it? Akshita?
Yes,
Did I
yes.
say it right? Akshita. That's Akshita's idea. Not my idea. I'm not going to do that.
Wow.
So for the ladies in the group, how many of you have gone shopping for a wedding dress with, as a bridesmaid, you've gone shopping for a wedding dress? Guys, you'll know this if any of you are married. hours are spent trying one dress on after another. And it's even worse for the bridesmaid dresses.
Yeah, sorry.
And the bride-to-be always says, tell me, which one is the best one? Okay, bridesmaids, forget it. Don't ever say your opinion. Because the bride's going to know it when she puts it on by the way she's feeling, right? Emotionally and in her sensory system. This is exactly what happens in coaching. Your ideas might be great ideas. I'm not second guessing your intellectual ability to come up with something that would be valuable for them. But if it doesn't come from the client, it won't implement. You're not responsible for the outcomes. You're responsible for the client choosing to produce an outcome that is different than the one they're already producing and don't like. This is key.
Love this analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I knew that when I was shopping.
This is the hardest mindset shift for adults who are learning coaching, because you've all been highly rewarded for what you know and how to transfer that knowledge to someone else in the form of skills and abilities that they then apply to something. This is all good. Don't lose it. These are very important capacities you have. They are not effective in coaching because the objective is different. The objective is autonomy for the client from conscious, deliberate, intentional, wholehearted embodiment. Theirs. Now, we have to do it in order to create the environment for that kind of an exchange to happen. That's the learning journey for us that never stops. Reflection on our practice, on a session, listening to recordings, looking at transcripts, having a conversation with each other like we're doing here. These are all ways in which we begin to recognize, I had an unconscious action there. I have a client, I swear, at least twice in an hour-long session, I have to say, stop it. You got me on a platform again. You're supposed to be the one talking, not me. Yes, you'll have that quality of partnering over time where people begin to realize when they deflect asking me a question and they get me hooked into answering it, they're deflecting from the thing that's important to them. That's their defense mechanism. We all do it. We're human beings. So what's important is for me to pay attention to when that happens. So, so what's the vulnerable point here that you're avoiding by getting me talking about some theory or some practice? Boom, we're right back into the coaching again. So go easy on yourselves. You are going to fall out of coaching. The key is learn to recognize when it happens and bring it back. Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. Let's see what else we have in store here. You guys all have the deck, right? This is a Chilean author, poet, artist, amazing guy. He built a home on the west coast of Chile in a town called Valparaiso that is made like a boat, like a big ship. And the front door to the house is in what would be the bilge area of a ship on the sea. And the prow of the boat looks out over the cliff. An extraordinary place. He has quite an interesting way of looking at the world. Anybody like reading poetry? All right, Payal, why don't you do that? Why don't you read this for us? And let yourself hear the poem and also read the words at the same time and see what the multiple dimensions affords you. Go ahead, Payal.
Yes, sure then. Maybe the journey isn't so much about becoming anything. Maybe it's about unbecoming everything that isn't really you. So you can be who you were meant to be in the first place. Follow good.
And so, what lands for you about that? Is it an idea that's familiar to you? Is it an idea that you immediately went, yes, that's me? I'm always in an unbecoming way. Or was it something that you thought, wow, I've never really thought about that? As Avni said, it's so deep. I don't think about it. What you see on the left-hand side is what I call the Rosetta for the authentic self. You see it in the center there. And the first ring in a kind of, I don't know, some kind of a green. Essence, pathway, values, and principles. We've talked a little bit about values. Principles are the phrases or mantras that you live your life by. One of mine is a deep belief in reciprocal prosperity. I know that when I'm generously sharing out into the world, it will return to me. And it may come from someone I never knew was touched by something and picks up the phone and calls me. I never met Payal before, but she told me she'd been following me for a while and decided to pick up the phone and call. This is an example. Pathway is practices, which we've been talking a little bit about already this morning. Essence is the core of who you are. And our essence has always been with us from the day we were born, growing itself as we grow ourselves as human beings. Everybody else knows our essence, but if we're caught in fitting in the world and doing the things the world expects of us, we often kind of lose our connection to the essence of who we are unless somebody invites us to share it. A really fun little activity you could take away. Ask 3 or 4 people who know you pretty well. They're in your life. Maybe not family members. They have a little too much investment in your point, you having a point of view that they like you. But good friends, perhaps, maybe even colleagues, maybe each other in this room, to give you 3 to 5 traits that they associate with who you are. And you'll have the beginning of your essence. Listen to the words, see them in print, notice where your body responds to it physically and emotionally. I'm going to give you my essence statement. It's changed a little bit from the first time I wrote it, which was about 25 years ago. But I would say now that this is very solidly who I am. And I'm always open. On a regular basis, I reflect on the practices of building an essence statement and realize, there's something new coming in. So here it is. I am alchemical seer, radiant, sovereign, black pearl beauty, savvy, sassy, generous expression, riding on the winds of joy. As I quiet into my faith, my pathway practice is to listen deeply to my soul's calling and consciously answer it. And so the connection to the authentic self, the coming back home to something that is true for me and only for me. You might have the same words when you sit down to write an essence and a pathway statement, but it will mean something completely different. You were born in a different place. You've traveled to different places than I have. You speak many different languages. You have a different faith. Any of the identity factors that make you you will make the words be different. What matters is the internal experience. And if that's true for you as a human, it's true for your client. And then how do your two essences play with each other in a session? Not by trying to figure it out, but by being in the experience of each other. So you noticed on the visual, which you all have, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this today. This is a whole body of work on how to be whole. is intentions, choices, and actions. This is what influences our life circumstance. We're never a victim. We are always part, cause, or agent of our life experience. When we are conscious, deliberate, and intentional, we influence the quality of our life. I've just described the inside out process, and I'm sure you've talked a little bit about this in your immersion work, as opposed to outside in. Now, when you went to school, at every level of school, and when you went out into life and you have your professional endeavors, yes, you want to know what's expected of you and you want to perform to expectations because you get a reward for that. That's an outside in learning. Nothing wrong, simply incomplete. And what we're seeking, all of us as humans, is, can I have an inside out experience that matches to the place I've chosen to show up and contribute an outside in expectation? This is the key. And most of the time, people don't think about this consciously. Thank you, Avni, for your setup for that earlier. And as a result, they have tension. They have some conflict inside of themselves. I don't fit in this culture. I don't fit in this circle of friends. I don't fit in this community event. And they don't generally say it out loud. They just suffer and tolerate the tension until one day it's too much. They find themselves in tears, or they're emotionally frayed, things at the edges are uncomfortable. And they call a coach. We could mistakenly address the phrase, the frayed at the edges, but we'd miss the deeper work. Who are you as a human being? What do you know of the essence of yourself? What keeps you connected to it? What has you be disconnected from it? What would be the pathway back home that our coaching could be looking at? There are only, according to some studies, CEOs of companies, there are only 9% who consider themselves whole. Most find themselves in the quiet moment before they leave their office, or as they're sitting in their study at home before they go to bed, realizing that there's so much of their life that they're not living because they've chosen an outside-in responsibility to a large organization, to a community, to all the communities that they're operating in. And they lose connection to the essence of who they are. They don't need us as coaches to tell them how to run their businesses. What they want from us as coaches is to challenge them to be in their whole selves. Good news is when they do that, they're a happier person. They have access to more imagination and creativity. And they realize that they are surrounded by many, 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 many smart people. They're not the only ones who are smart. So I've taken you, zoomed you back into the heart, into the simplicity of us, and then took you right back out into the world. Yeah, we get to play in all of those locations. All right, comment or question about what we did just there?
I just so a few days ago I was reading somewhere that life doesn't come at you, it comes from you. And I think this is completely in line with that, because so many times we think, oh, I am like this because of this, this happened and that belief and those beliefs, my conditioning, blah, blah, blah. And that's why I am the way I am. But I think this emphasizes the fact that it is you, who choose to become what you really want to, become, and unbecome what the society wanted you to be. So yeah, this is really beautiful.
Insightful. And the truth is both exist at the same time. They're both truths, right? Yes, we are a product of our environment and our conditioning, but we're not a victim to it. We were a willing agent of having the environment influence our point of view. I'll never forget You know, politics is on my mind right now. As you all know, things are crazy here, and they're crazy in your country too, I understand. So we're in the same boat. But growing up, I grew up in a Republican household, not arch conservative Republican, but fiscally responsible. And my parents cared a lot about our community, and we were very active in our community. But I went to college and I met all kinds of other people at college, and I came home a Democrat. And my parents were like, "What happened to you?" I said, "Well, I realized that this one way of seeing the world wasn't the only way to see the world." And I started to accept responsibility for creating my life experience and the people that I was with and what was meaningful to me. And so my inherited values were replaced with the lived values that I knew were feeding my own soul. And that's a lifetime process. Most often, people come to coaching because they're having a values conflict. They won't announce that. They're not going to show up to a session and say, "I want to deal with the value of trust that's been violated in my workplace." They're not going to say that. They might tell you a story and you're going to hear it. It's not really what's going on in themselves. They violated their own self-trust. They made choices. They made decisions. They showed up with people in a way that they're not proud of. That's our work. Because when we can forgive and restore access to the essence of who they are, they will show up differently and produce a different result. We're not going to be there when that happens. What we want to do is give them back access to the wholeness of who they are.
Janet, there is a quote by Mahatma Gandhi which says, "Happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do is in complete sync." And I think for me that is authenticity. And from what I hear and what I've learned from Payal and you and the other coaches is that I think we have to make the client realize that, or at least reach that point where they at least are aware that, if there is a imbalance, they are at least aware that there is an imbalance and they might reflect on it. So I think suddenly that quote came into my mind when we were talking about authenticity. And I was also reflecting on my own self, and I have, the most frank kind of arguments that I have is with my husband, where I can be my authentic self. And I find myself, when we are arguing about something at work or relationships or talking about a relative, and we are like, I'm conflicted, I have found myself saying that, this is so much against my values. I am aware at that point of time. So I believe if even being aware and knowing that, why you're disturbed is because it is not in sync with your values, and then working your way around it, I think. So I personally, if I'm coaching somebody, I would love to, get them to that state. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And notice, Ashley, that's with your husband, right? Partner, life partner. I learned very early on, if you can't fight with your life partner, you don't have integrity in the relationship.
Yeah.
The same is true with a client, right? We must believe that our challenging question might put them in vulnerability, but it's the question we want to ask because they've asked us to ask it by their behavior. They're miserable, they're struggling, they're feeling challenged by something. If we don't challenge them back to see that that's the outside in, you're being a victim when you are part cause or agent of what's happened, right?
Right.
That's our value proposition. So we got to get good with feeling uncomfortable so that we can hold that environment in a way. I notice I said environment, not space on purpose. That phrase drives me crazy in coaching. You hear it all the time. "Oh, I have to hold space." Do you think a client understands what that means? I don't think so. So what is the environment? Just like when we go outside, is it sunny or rainy today? That's a really fun thing to ask a client. If you were a weather pattern right now, what would be your descriptors? And you'll learn all kinds of things about what's going on for that client. And in that moment, we've made it safe for them to be inhabiting this environment together. Yeah. Yeah, beautifully said. You know, let me give you one more piece, Akshita, and then you can add to it. I think that we take for granted we know what the word reflection means. And there's really 3 micro skills to it, and you've just modeled it, Ashu. The first is noticing that something's caught your attention. So the Gandhi quote caught your attention. And you sat with it for a moment and you asked yourself, I wonder what prompted that to come up. And you connected it to what I was sharing about the authentic self and inside out, and getting, my word would be coherence in all ways of expression as a human. And when that coherence is there, then the next thing is, what could I ask, and of whom, that would help me to incorporate this insight that I noticed in my reflection and the connection I was making to the learning. Those are 3 micro skills, and you just modeled it beautifully. Thank you. Go ahead, Akshita.
I have a question that I've probably been looking for an answer for years now, and maybe I can ask you. So, I'm going to give you an example, right? So I have, I'm the youngest of the 3 kids of my parents, and all 3 of us were brought in the similar manner, right? So, from where I come, religion, caste, all these things are huge, huge deals, right? So one of the taboos is menstrual cycle, right? So from where I come, menstrual cycle is considered a bad thing. Okay, it's bad. Like if a woman is on her periods, she would be barred from the kitchen. She cannot cook, blah, blah, blah. She cannot go to the temple, etc., etc. And it was so deeply, I think, into my DNA that I actually felt for about 16, 17 years of my life that it is a bad thing. And only when I came, out of my city, started studying, met people, kind of slowly realized, no, it's not right, and then I studied about it. It's not what it is. Until, I mean, I'm 32 now, but to this date, I know there's nothing bad about it, but it's so deeply conditioned. But I fight, right? I fight with my mom, my sister, right? That, it is not what you think it is. Now, my question is that my sister still believes, and she has studied science. Okay, she's master's in science. She studied quite a lot, more than me. And I always ask her, you are a science student. How do you believe that it's a bad thing when it is not? It's not impure, right? So how did I become different than her when we had the same parents, same conditioning, same everything? And also she has exposure too. So how do people become different and then they get good at self-reflection?
Okay.
I don't
And how
know.
did you? You know the answer to how you did it.
Oh, I don't know,
You
honestly.
left your city, you met new people, and you gave yourself permission to learn something outside of what was familiar and known to you. You gave yourself permission, right? You listened to an inner authority that had the question, and you started seeking. So this is why you cannot give advice about how people live their lives and expect them to follow it. It won't happen. It just won't happen because there's no internal coherence,
Yeah.
right? This is what Akshita was showing. So the second part of your question, however, is very intriguing. How could somebody who knows better still hold on to something that clearly is contradictory? Yeah, this is why humans are messy. It's not a scientific formula, human beings. So there is more investment for her in her faith, than there is in any rational, objective discussion about it. People believe that the gods live inside of volcanoes. And when the gods are mad, the volcano erupts. any thermal scientist would give them a completely different answer. I don't care. I believe that the gods are mad, so that's how I'm going to live my life. So the internal consciousness, the choice of what I'm going to be in charge of and not be in charge of, evolves over time. Yours evolved more quickly. There is something serving your sister, of holding on to that tradition. There is something she feeds in herself by having that. She doesn't feel the contradiction that you feel. And it creates conflict and tension between you. So in some ways, she's defining her identity that way. You are asking her to change her identity at this stage in her life. That's a big ask. Now, if she decides to question it and wants support in getting there, you are all in. You're going to be the first person she comes to. But right now, you're asking her to let go of something that is, in her mind, the essence of who she is. And yes, there are many contradictions to this. Indigenous peoples all around the world revered the feminine. And you were separated in order to have time in the temple. Whether it was a teepee or the stone, it doesn't matter, right? Some of you know probably Rayanne Eisler's work. Her seminal piece of work early was called The Chalice and the Blade. And she essentially posited that archaeologists and anthropologists, who primarily were all men, because women were not allowed to be educated, looked at the data and decided that society developed through the masculine. And she gave the whole opposite and supported it with science point of view that actually the early societies were matriarchal. Two truths existing side by side. So this is why the intellect is not enough. We need to be in the heart and in the body. And without internal coherence, people will not change. And right now, your sister's internal coherence is fed in some way, honored in some way by what she holds.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, that's why, I don't know, people like me are called crazy, who question everything, everything.
Well, if that's crazy, I'm happy to be one.
Yeah. Same. Likewise.
Exactly. Exactly. And there is no less love for people who are in a different perspective and point of view at a staging in their lives, right? I am always astonished by what people ask about, because they are living their lives. They're not living my life. Like, oh, I've said for a long time, I think kids coming out of high school ought to take a year off and go to some country other than the one they grow up in. Because we have such a narrow frame of reference if we're not exposed to the 8 billion people on the planet. Go someplace where you don't know the language. Go someplace where they eat different food. If for no other reason than to soften our grip on our reticular activating system that thinks this is how the world has to be. Coaches do that. In every session, we give clients an opportunity to have an experience of themselves that they don't give themselves permission for out in their daily lives until they do. And you can never predict when that's going to happen. Yeah. Okay. Let's keep going. All right. We've been talking about this a little bit. Actually, the example you just gave us is a really good one. There is a bit of a mirage of separation. There's a wonderful story that comes out of India, actually, Indra's net, which helps us to understand that we are all with one. And leaders often adopt an expected identity. That's the outside in, both to achieve, of course, but it's also to avoid discomfort. The one they feel internally, if they really said their point of view, they'd have to suffer the wrath of others for whom their authenticity is uncomfortable. And then later, the discomfort becomes where they have not expressed out of their whole self and they feel regret from that. And of course, the problem is that this often denies the authentic self. And why do we do it? Well, fear, of course. I'm going to give you 4 versions of this. As an acronym, fear is false evidence appearing real. I didn't make that up. That comes from a guy named Zig Ziglar, who's probably 60 years now. He's been working in the field of sales. So here's some other ones. Fear of not being important. Classic shadow, Jungian shadow point of view. Fear of other people's opinions. This is the comparison and competition that we feel with other people. We don't feel good about ourselves because somebody else is doing it better. So then we become afraid of their opinion of us and we strive to get that resolved. Fear of missing out. So-and-so's got a Coach bag. I need to have the same Coach bag, or whatever it might be, the red Maserati. But this one is every bit as strong. The fear of success occurring, because when I am successful, then everyone will expect me to continue to be successful. Can cause people to have high achievement, but also high dissatisfaction in themselves. And so this is attention. These are common fears that will show up in your coaching. So what are we after? Tension and authenticity. Now, I give you a little metaphor here, because when we were hunters and gatherers, how did we get our food? We put something heavy inside of a piece of elastic, we aimed, and we let it go. And hopefully it hit that bison enough in the head that it dropped them, slowed them down, so that we could then go get the food and feed ourselves. Tension is a good thing. I'm normalizing it for you. And there are a set of tools where we learn to harness tension, sitting in that discomfort, Akshita. This will be very important. Can you be in the discomfort of this difference of point of view with your sister and recognize that it's actually binding you two together? When you stop fighting it and let her be, imagine what else will open. And ultimately, what are we doing here? We are wanting to find the place of balance for ourselves. And ultimately, learning to leverage this for our wholeness is a mindset. What is mindset? Did you guys do mindset in your immersion? Yeah? Okay. On the left-hand side are some of the traits of mindset. On the right-hand side is why it matters, and it matters a lot. So when you are listening to a client, you are having an experience of how they show up out in life. You are also having an experience of how they interact with others. Unless they say, oh, I never talk like this with anybody else. That's very rare, but it would be a clue that there's some opening happening. And ultimately, as you're asking questions about what did they pay attention to, what did they prioritize, what value did that honor, what did you believe was going on there, what motivated that action, these are all their process of making decisions, and these come from their mindset. If they're on the autopilot switch, we're going to want to help them turn the autopilot off so that they can start to see, I have one way of going. I could have another way of going. What would I believe in order to make it okay to have another way of going? What would your sister believe to have a new point of view about this without losing what in her identity has her have faith in being a woman, where she is, in what she's doing? All right. So we've been speaking about it. I want to just give you a little bit of the visual here. Sovereignty has been around for a very, very long time, long before there were geopolitical borders that we talked about it in. And if you break the word down, sov is self in Latin, and then reign, rule or ruler. So sovereign basically means self-ruling. To live sovereign means to enjoy freedom to express ourselves, whatever that is, personally and professionally, from our authentic self. And how does that happen? We recognize that we do have an inner authority. We have some rubric, some that comes from our deep faith in something larger than ourselves, in whatever form one worships that, and some that comes from our environment, our family, our community, our country, our language, our traditions. All of these things form an inner authority, and it's not static. We are able to change. For some, that's a tough belief. For some, they don't believe that they can change. This is what Carol Dweck was talking about with fixed mindset. It's not calcified. Given enough safety and the right partnership, everybody can begin to consider something that is outside of their status quo. It's the first step of then realizing, if the way I am relating to my life circumstance right now is creating so much discomfort that I'm not able to show up, I'm either collapsed into my fear and depression, or I'm outwardly aggressive in my anger and disappointment. It's the same pattern. I get to decide if I accept responsibility that I somehow created this condition that I found myself in. Now I've restored the power of choice. And it works in all aspects of our lives, our context, our culture, our life circumstances, and our relationships. In its most graphic, you all probably have studied a little bit of Viktor Frankl and his time in the concentration camps, right? So his ability to recognize they cannot take my soul away, and until they take my breath away, they can't take my breath away. Therefore, I am alive. And that faith got him through. Now, that's a really extreme example, but there are moments in our own personal lives when we feel like that, like, oh my gosh, can I survive this? And the answer is yes. It will require making a choice, accepting responsibility that we can. And this is the territory we're navigating always with clients. What does the core of themselves, what is the essence of who they are? What does that part of them want? Not that they're going to go there tomorrow, but if they can't articulate for themselves what they truly want, they're never going to get there. So if that's what I want as the end game, one might call that the goal that we want to manifest, then what do I want to experience on my way there? And as I'm experiencing it, then what am I going to pay attention to? This is the work of coaching, helping them to declare consciously, deliberately, intentionally, from a wholeheartedness. All right. I want to do something that's a little body exercise for you. How many of you know that the body always knows first? Just give me a show of hands. Oh, good. Well, okay, Pooja, you're not sure. Did you raise your hand? Oh, no, you raised your hand. Okay, good. All right. When I was going to school, undergrad and grad, frankly, I learned that thoughts evoke emotions, evokes action. That's backwards. But it took me my coaching education and practice to realize that my body always knew before the client did something or said something what was coming. I had to retrain myself to listen to my body. And I knew that my body created the emotion. Everybody, I mean, I had a sorry, that my emotion goes to a thought that I verbalize. I learned this. This is a very embarrassing story, but it's illustrative. I had a boss who was trying to give me a compliment. And he said, do you realize how smart you are and how many people value the intelligence that you bring into the conversation? I deflected the compliment and I said to him, can I tell you a little secret? He kind of looked at me funny, and I said, truthfully, I'm highly intuitive. I knew the answer well in advance, but I know nobody would believe me. So I go and do the research necessary for you all who need the intellectual answer to get it, even though I knew we were going to get there. He was so mad at me. I think it took him a year to forgive me for ever telling him that. But I knew in that moment, oh my gosh, this has always been true. My intuition has always known in advance. I didn't need to work it out in my head. I guarantee you, every single one of you has come to coaching because this is true for you. You've learned to work things out in your head. Good. Keep doing it. It's a part of it. But the intuition is the deeper pulse and the instinct along with it. The gut brain and the heart brain, oh my gosh, they knew way before the head brain. And even worse, the head brain thinks in yes and no, black and white, right and wrong, dualistic thinking, because it's a bit of the ability to have critical thinking, to exercise discernment. Only the body, remember, it's unified. It doesn't have, the body doesn't have duality. It's unified. So there's a bit of tension, right? The heart and the gut know unity, and the head knows duality. Very interesting. Can we be still enough to let them all coexist? Okay, so you ready to play? Get yourself comfortable in your chair. If you can get your feet on the floor, that would be helpful. Not essential, but helpful. All right. Put your arm out in front of you, whichever one you're more comfortable with. It doesn't matter. All right. Now, let me give you the instruction before you do it. I'm going to have you very slowly, don't hurt your shoulder, move your arm so that it goes behind you. And then you're going to turn your head, and I want you to reach as far as you can reach without tipping over in your chair. Okay? All right. Arms out in front. Ready? All right. Lifting up. If you can follow your hand with yourself, that's great. And lean out as far as you can without tipping over, and then hold that for a few seconds. Scan your body from your toes up to the top of your head. See if you catch any emotion. Now take a nice inhale. You're probably holding your breath. And bring yourselves back. Okay, take a moment and capture the words that describe that experience for yourself physically and emotionally. Just jot them down on a piece of paper quickly. Okay, here's part 2. You can do this one of 2 ways. If you have a wall easily accessible, we don't need to see you when you do it. What I'm going to ask you to do is to put your hands and elbows flat against the wall. Put your feet back a little bit and lean into the wall. If you don't have a place to stand, you can do this at your desk, but you'll be bending at the waist and putting your weight, again, elbow to hand on the surface. Avinash, you're going to do this with an imaginary wall? That won't work.
I didn't have a wall behind the phone, so I just thought maybe I'm at the desk, so I thought I might use that.
You want to let your physical weight lean into something.
Yeah.
Okay? Okay, and the same thing. Notice what are the words that describe the physical and emotional experience of the second somatic stand. And let's take a couple shares. What did you learn about yourself with that activity? Avni, that was quite the somatic move you just did.
One thing I realized is that I'm not stretching enough.
Well, that's a very interesting metaphor, don't you think?
Yeah.
There's the practical level of not stretching enough.
So that's the first thing. And I think the second was that while I was stretching this way and the other way, my mind was blank. So I could hear two things. I could hear myself breathing and I could hear the tick tick in my watch. It was so silent and I was so engrossed into doing that for whatever, 30 seconds or 45 seconds. So yeah, and that's what I wrote. Not stretching enough and complete 1000% into doing that one thing for 30 seconds. Blank mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you imagine what that would offer your clients? So there's the recognition of it at the first level. I'm not stretching enough. What would be the second level of not stretching enough? Trusting myself with my clients to challenge them. What would be the next level of not stretching enough? Giving myself permission to have an experience of something that's so outside of my comfort zone so I can feel what that must feel like for my clients, strengthening my empathy. And we could keep going, right? And the noticing of your watch ticking, time is such an interesting thing. We don't have time enough today to talk about this, but we could do a whole 2 hours on our relationship to time. It's a construct. We made it up. And that ticking of the watch, I actually bought a watch to train for a marathon, and I can't figure out how to turn the alarm off. It goes off all throughout my day, and I have to Google the manual. But it's been reminding me of just how trapped we are in time. It's the number one excuse leaders give for not doing the thing they committed to themselves to do in the last session. I ran out of time. Who's in charge of your time? Very important piece. Who else?
In the first one, I don't know if I did it correctly or not, but I did feel discomfort on the left side of my back. So yeah, that felt a little tight. And the second time I closed my eyes, I felt like I was being pulled down, you know.
Mm.
Yeah, so that's what I felt.
Noticing the evaluation of, did I do it right or not? The body doesn't care about that, Akshita. It's an experience. You simply had an experience. So now the question is, as you reflect on the experience, what does it mean for your left side of your back to be tight? One idea that pops to mind is the body works in diagonals. So anything on the physical left side is on the brain right side. What's the right side of your brain? Creativity, right? The more of the intuitive cells. So if the left side of my body is tight, might it be keeping me from accessing all of my intuition? And it doesn't matter whether that's right or wrong. It's simply a thing to notice and go, huh, how intuitive have I been this week? And now you're down a whole nother river of exploration. Now, that's my orientation about the body. Somebody else may have a completely different orientation about the body. If the left side of their back is tight, they're probably thinking they overused the right side and underused the left side. And now they're down another path of exploration. It doesn't matter what interpretation. The client's interpretation matters. The meaning they make of it, how it influences their motivation. That's gold. Go ahead, Payal. I can see you. You keep going for your mute button.
Wow. You're very observant, Janet. Yeah. I felt really strange emotions. So when we stretched our hand out,
Mhm.
I felt a certain longing of what, I don't know.
Mm.
And then there was this, I could feel the rush of blood. And I started analyzing it. But then I just let it be. And then finally I was like, when is Janet going to ask us to come back? Because I started feeling fear of losing something very strongly.
Mm. Mm.
And the wall activity, I've very strong emotions again. I felt there was some resistance. I felt resistance. And I felt like I was being forced to surrender.
Mm.
I don't know. I mean, this is absolutely wondrous for me to feel so.
And for the rest of you, notice the language and how descriptive it is of the experience that she had. And notice the questions that might be bubbling for you as a result. This is what we're after. Can we give the client an opportunity to experience themselves? And so much of modern life, we lack opportunities where we can have an experience of ourselves and then someone genuinely is curious about how we describe it. You know, Payal, you've described going from longing to loss, right? And resistance to surrender. Well, those are a couple of pretty interesting tensions, don't you think?
Yeah, and I don't know, I'm surprised. As I said, I'm also quite curious now because I want to sit and reflect
Mm-hmm.
what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Love it.
I do. I mean, because I thought maybe you're just getting us to be present. Yes, but this whole lot of a present.
Yes, exactly. And we can't think our way there. We
can't.
have to let our body and our heart tell us there's something here that's useful for us to consider.
Absolutely. There's something I need to sit down with and not analyze, but like really just sit with it.
Yeah. So for all of you, take it into meditation. All right. Ask the higher selves to provide you with an image or a sensation or a smell or a memory, something that would help to amplify the experience you've just had. Not your brain. Not this brain, anyway. The executive function can take a vacation.
That rhymes.
All right. Anybody else? Another comment or two?
So Janet, if I may,
Mm-hmm.
the first activity, I was like, my first reaction or the feeling was, of course, discomfort, having to do something that you're not supposed to do. But the first thought that crossed my mind is, why do I need to do this at this hour? But I did it nevertheless, and I stretched, and it was okay. But the second time when I leaned against the wall, I was thinking about how I felt, and it actually was very relieving because you were able to put that weight. And I was like, why can't we have something like this, in between whenever we're feeling some discomfort? Why don't we have something to lean upon after that, so that you can, relieve the tension or whatever, the stretching or the extra work that the muscles did. Now you can relax them. That's how I felt.
Yeah, good. Namaste. How many of you have kids? Okay. And what do 2-year and 3-year-olds do when they've been stretching like crazy all day? What's the next thing they do? Yeah, that's right, Avinash. Usually their head goes smack onto the table.
Yes.
And they're out. Yeah. So that's in the body memory, right? The body says enough's enough. My mother tells a funny joke that I could fall asleep in mid-sentence. When my body was done, I would just be out. Crazy, just crazy. So when we have something to lean against, take this back to your coaching. When we have something to lean against, we can turn the brain off and we can surrender into the support. Yes, it is resistance. It's resistance to moving. Oh, stillness. Oh, I can surrender that something's got me, right? I'm not falling. And as the antithesis of the stretch, right? So I was doing that perceptual contrast on purpose. So I gave you a somatic metaphor here to play with. We started talking about metaphors, right? So get creative with this. Find the way when you're with a client. If you're someone who likes working in person and you're walking along a street or a lake, or you're sitting in a park, do something somatically. Sometimes, do they have mimes in your city? People who are silent, but they hold positions. And then they might very slowly move to another position, and people have a bucket out to correct pennies. Okay. Have your client take a position that they somatically recognize as how they're experiencing the situation they brought to coaching. And have them hold it for 15. It really was only 15 seconds, by the way. And then have them describe it emotionally and physically. Don't analyze it, just descriptors, and then have them take a second position that better reflects what they want. Describe it again, and then sit back down and drop back into the coaching. Now, obviously, you want to ask them permission. Would they be available to experiment with something that you're doing in the body, right? All of those things need to happen. But the use of the body and the emotional field will be highly rewarding for you and clients, and it keeps you out of solutioning. Anything else? Just a couple of things to wrap us up, and then we'll do a little Q&A. All right. And let's see, where am I? So when I was doing that research, and it's just a very simple graphic. I don't really think about this as a model. In fact, models kind of annoy me because it's very rear view mirror. And in some ways, that's what research is too. It helps us to try to make meaning out of something. What I was more trying to do is find a way to help people see a more holistic picture of their experience. So the leaders that I was working with were undervaluing learn, originate, and create. So I had them all 4 there, and they can be moved. You can move through these dynamic capacities in any order that you want. And it could be even a reflective frame, and ultimately tying it back to the authentic self. What part of you, client, showed up in that moment to choose that behavior? What part of you, client, chose to show up with that behavior in that moment with those people Where is that a habit, a preference, a bias, an assumption? What if you were to choose more deliberately, more consciously, more intentionally, more wholeheartedly? What would be the new behavior? What would you have to believe to use that new behavior? This is generative work in our coaching conversations. And ultimately, this is the set of primary skills. I'm not trying to teach you this today, but you have had an opportunity to experience some of it. And how do we sustain it? How do we sustain connection to our authenticity, live in a sovereign way, and be generative? Well, we want to pace our patterns. What are our patterns of being? And to have a beginner's mind. This was the quality of so many of these successful leaders, that they were available to let go of all of their hard-won expertise and wisdom, and to recognize the world is always changing. Let me see what is out there. Another is to experiment, to engage from insight versus intellect. The activity we just did as an example of that. And then deep honesty, to believe that there's always more than what's happening right now. Even in the right now, there's more going on in our created field here together than we've given voice to. And many of those things not given voice to are going to continue to linger, because all of them are based in the essence of you, the real you, what I call the inner, stripped of the convenience of personality. Personality is not our enemy, it's just insufficient. It's the thing we developed necessarily in order to make our way in the world until we felt like, oh, okay, I really am in charge and I'll accept responsibility for how I'm choosing. Ultimately, now let me reclaim the aspects of myself. I was a very creative young child. What my parents valued was my intellect. So I put my intuition in the closet. And in that moment with my boss, where I deflected his compliment, I realized, uh-oh, I can see I'm about to embark on a journey where I'm reclaiming my intuition. And imagine that I became a coach. So you might take just a moment. Where are you on the spectrum of experience as we're exiting today? I'll leave this up for 10 seconds and then we'll just open it for questions. All right, the floor is yours in whatever order you want.
Janet, hi, this is Devia.
Hi.
I couldn't participate too much during the question answers, but I was mostly listening. See, I have a very a different question, maybe not from the exact session, but so I've been constantly hearing about this, that and in my immersions also we have been going through that coaching is never about giving a solution from the coach's side. It should come from the coachee, that and then only it will become executionable, and then only it will become uh, like something he or she will own up to, right? But when a coach is in a say a technical kind of a coach, for example, a coach of a sports team, or coach of a yeah, for example, a sports team. There, if he or she is that coach is a technical person and gives a has to give a technical advice, or that kind of an advice to a person, it has to come in a form of an advice, right? It cannot be like in a different way. Like if a particular person is swimming wrong and the stroke has to be done right in a particular way, that has to be told. So is there a difference? Obviously, there is a difference, but how do we actually differentiate?
Excellent example, and nice to meet you. Yes, coaching lives along a spectrum from very directive work, generally would be seen more as mentor, guide, trainer, educator, not coach. I know we use the word coach. I'm a former athlete. I was a swimmer and a figure skater, and absolutely needed my coach to instruct and then to give feedback and then to instruct again and to give feedback and to teach me how to reflect and give myself feedback and own my feedback so I could self-correct when I was on the ice or in the pool. All the way to the other end of the spectrum, the generative work I'm talking about is highly non-directive. And coaching lives all along that spectrum. Whatever we call it, we call it. The hypothesis of the core competencies of the ICF and the competencies in the MCC, they are mirror images of each other, are that when we foster autonomy and ownership in the client, they will sustain the change that produces a result they find more desirable. And that's really what we're after, right? So sometimes a coach will do that. The greats in basketball, in football, in Olympic athletics know that the mindset of the athlete is as important as the skills, if not more important. You can be technically competent and still not win the gold, because winning the gold requires grit, perseverance, digging deeper, being able to have a fuller expression of your humanity. So I think the question you're after is, how do I describe to somebody else what they will experience in coaching?
Yes, because there are times when I feel like people are there for a solution, but we have to kind of go ahead and inform or set a boundary that it cannot be, there would not be a solution, but there would be something which will come out of this discussion. So the setting the outcome becomes very necessary in that case.
Yes. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a cheeky answer. What makes you think your client knows what the heck to ask for in their coaching? They don't. They probably had a sports coach at some time, or they had a coach to play an instrument, or they had a tutor with their educational studies. They're asking the question their context can ask, which is, I have a problem, help me solve it. They have no idea that there are many ways to solve it. One of which is to remember that they have inside of them resourceful, capable, creative selves that have answers. They're just not listening. So one possibility, client, is that our conversation will help you to examine this problem from some different angles. And from those angles, you're going to recognize that you do have an answer. You just haven't been listening to it. If I give you the answer, it will be from my experience, not from yours. And your experience is far more relevant. You will always know more about your context and your situation than I will ever learn in a lifetime, because it's your context and your situation, client. So you see, what's important here is that you stay in the conversation, stay partnered with them to help them to recognize what they long for is autonomy in their lives. They want to accept that they have the power of choice and that the decisions live inside of them. They just don't know it, because life doesn't work that way. We think life works outside in. And if they're in outside in, they're going to say, solve my problem for me. And you're going to say, what from inside of you have you already considered as a solution? What's stopping you from pursuing that solution? What are the beliefs you have? What's your evidence behind that belief that says it's not possible? What are you doing? You're coaching. You're giving them an experience of exactly what could happen over time with them in that moment with that problem. I can't tell you how many times I had people come into my office as an executive and talk for 15 minutes and then look up at me and say, thanks, that was so helpful. I so appreciate your help. I didn't say a word. Because what they knew is that I'd hold the environment where they could hear themselves think. It's one of the greatest gifts we give. So hold this question you're in a little lighter and stay and coach and keep in the conversation with clients to help them to see that, yes, you can get an answer from somebody else. How often do you follow somebody else's advice, leader? Well, I don't.
Mhm.
Exactly. So mine's not going to be as relevant as yours because you're always going to know more than me. So the other option is that we're in a thought-provoking and creative exchange that helps you to listen more carefully to the parts of you that do have ideas about this solution and what's stopping you. Skill 3.7, partnering with the client to identify what to address or resolve in the session so that they can make progress outside. Inside, we're focusing on what's in the way.
Right. Thank you. That was great. That was helpful.
Good, 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 good. I've got 3 minutes. You can do more.
Yeah, I was going to say that we have 3 minutes, so we have time for at least one more quick question. You could share your thoughts about the session as well, dear coaches.
So, Janet, I have a question. I mean, of course, we have kind of talked about it in previous sessions as well, whatever we have had. But when you're coaching your people who are reporting to you, how do you resist the temptation of telling them what is right?
The freedom I have because they step into bigger shoes for themselves. That's what I hold on to. They're
Yeah.
on the team because they have some combination of knowledge, skills, ability, and passion. And my organization will scale when they scale their knowledge, skills, ability, and passion. So I remember I get freedom by giving them more space to step into bigger shoes. And sometimes they're like, no, don't do that to me. I need direction. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, here it is. What now will you choose as a result of hearing that direction? Well, I was going to go that way anyway. I said, great. Then the conversation that's important to have is what has you not trusting your own gut instinct? I'm right back in it. So that's how I do it. I remember the freedom that I get when they get to be bigger.
I think that's a great one. I will totally remember that. Yes, thank you.
You're very welcome. And thank you all for your attention, your presence, your questions, and your engagement. That little activity I gave you is not an easy one. I know that. And please use it. Anything actually from the deck, you're more than welcome to experiment with your clients. I don't hold tightly to intellectual property because I don't think there's anything new on the planet. And I do think people have been coaching each other since we could grunt. We just have like the constellation in the sky. We've constellated coaching in the form that it is now since the early to mid 90s. And I think it's here for a reason because being human doesn't have a destination. And right now we're seeking how to be a bit more wholehearted in order to thrive.
Wow, Janet, thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, this session was so brilliant that for me it feels like a spiritual, step. Literally very, very spiritual. So I think when we talk about coaching being a journey into self is how I see it. And I did share with you, it's like discovering my own self.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Remembering.
yes.
Remembering ourselves. And I do think that's true that, the early creators of the ICF all said coaching is practical spirituality. And I think that captures it very well. You know, that we have been inspirited by incarnating into a human body, and we spend our lifetimes living into that as fully as we can.
Thank you, Janet, for your time, for your generosity, for being here with us. And I'm going to go away with these 4 words: conscious, deliberate, intentional, and wholeheartedness. Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you for this gift to us today, in showing us coaching in a completely whole and new dimension. And thank you to the cohort. I know it's very late for all of you, but staying through and through. And I think it's our honor, Janet, that you are here today. And thank you, dear coaches, for showing up so fully.
I will look forward to the day when I get to see you in person.
Yes, sure. I'm inviting on behalf of Ashu, Avni, and Ashish sir is not here, and all the other Shoolini fellow colleagues. This is a warm invite to you to visit the campus. Avni and Ashu, Janet has been talking about the possibility of visiting India and then visiting Shoolini.
We look forward to that, Janet. It will be lovely to meet you here on campus. We look forward to that. And we are sending out all our wishes to the universe and manifesting your being here. Right. Yes.
Thank you. So can I take a formal picture with all of us who are here? And smile. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Good night to everyone. And Janet, please have a wonderful day ahead of you.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Thank you so much.
That's great.
I'll be sharing the recording with everyone very soon.
Thank you.
Much,
Thank
Janet.
Thank you.